Another thing that you need to remember is that not only books are, threats to your book that you are trying to publish. There are different kinds of competition and threats that you also need to consider. I have the little photo here of the boys playing games. So one of the interesting things was, and there's been a lot of articles written on this, is what they call reluctant readers. So these are usually boys. We say usually boys because it's predominantly boys who, at the age, I think it's between 11 and 13, where they start losing interest in books and reading. So it's not necessarily that they cannot read or they don't have the access to books. They have all of these things, they just don't want to read. Therefore, the word reluctant. And a lot of publishers have done some research on this, and they then said that sometimes it's also about the chicken and egg situation. Maybe they don't read because there aren't really books that reflect their life world or things that they are interested in, or the books that are provided are basically too boring, or it doesn't really speak to the specific audience. Now, if you think of books like Diary of a Wimpy Kid, that is really something that changed the reading habits of boys, girls as well, but that is something that got young boys back into reading. The same with Harry Potter. I have an Afrikaans example here called 13 Ghost Stories. Now, boys have always been very interested in the macabre and the horror and ghost stories, and in Afrikaans we call it grill stories. And they found that this was really successful in this specific age group, whereas and it's shorter reads, it's scary stuff. Another thing that they also found with reluctant readers is a lot of times they like to read very humorous, things that are very funny, like a book full of jokes, or a story that has a lot of humor in it. Even if you think about the style of the Diary of a Wimpy Kid, it's also interesting to see the little drawings inside. So the format and the structure sometimes need to change to appeal to a certain audience. Otherwise, all these other kinds of entertainment will take preference over your books that you actually want them to read. So think about your competitors. Now, I always say there aren't enemies, they are only frenemies. What I mean with that is make friends with your enemies, learn from them, because obviously there's something in them that you either admire, although you criticize it, it's actually something that's lacking within yourself. That's a little bit of Jung theory for you there. It's what they call mirroring as well, but let's not get into the psych stuff now. But competitors is you have to get to know them. I don't mean personally, but know your publishing house, know your competing publishing house. What is it that they publish? Why do people like them so much? Or like with Penguin Random House, you know that they have a great infrastructure. It's a multinational company. They have branches worldwide. That is not necessarily something that you can compete with if you're an independent, small South African publishing house. But therefore, you don't try to compete on that level. You will try and compete on a different level. Maybe offering your South African citizens something different that the Penguin Random House or the big multinationals cannot do. So with your competitor profile, you look at things like what authors are they, which authors are they publishing currently? Who do they have on their bestseller list? Or are they maybe publishers that are more focused on developing and canvassing for debut authors because they want something fresh and new? What are the subject categories that your competitors would usually publish in? Is it more social sciences and you rather do communication and business studies if you're an academic publisher? Even as an educational publisher, you don't necessarily specialize in all the grades. It can be that you only specialize in grades 2 to 5 and someone else does, the intermediary foundation, all those kinds of phases. Or is it that you are only focusing on horror and dystopian and speculative fiction, whereas another publishing house is known for their romance novels? Who are your dominant competitors? You need to know who has the biggest market share, all right? There's no use in just, closing your eyes and then just going into this market and saying, oh, well, I'll just spray and pray and try and see if anything works. Maybe I'll hit a target somewhere. No. Do your homework, see what's out there, see who are your dominant competitors, then you'll know where to position yourself as a publisher. What format and designs are they publishing in? And if they're specifically a coffee table book publisher, Obviously, they'll have beautiful aesthetic, they'll have the best photographers, they'll have money to print high quality, beautifully bound, hardcover coffee table books. If you are a paperback trade publisher, you wouldn't necessarily be able to compete with them on that level once again. Do they have very beautiful design? I know Quivertree, they do beautiful cookbooks. Or Strike Nature, and Breezel, look at those kinds of publishers and exactly what it is. What kind of format are they known for? It also depends on the genre that they're publishing. The pricing, are they usually priced a little bit higher than the other publishing houses? Are they all usually average priced? Sometimes pricing can be a strategy as to put yourself in a different segment. So, for example, you always price your books a little bit higher because you want to give people that an idea that you are, a little bit more sophisticated, or your products are more valuable. It's the same with exclusive books and bargain books. Although they have exactly the same kind of book, the markup at exclusive books would sometimes be higher than bargain books because there's an air to it. There's something of status attached to it. While I bought my book at exclusive books, or did I buy my book at bargain books, for example. The longevity. Is this a flash in the pan kind of publishing house that has it's a startup and they're doing all these things, and it may be that in 6 months they're not going to exist anymore? Or is it the publishing house that's been around for hundreds of years, like NB Publishers? I think 1914 or 15 or something they started already. And people trust them because they're almost part of our whole heritage already. And the kinds of books they publish, NB Publishers, for example, publish one of the imprints, Human and Rousseau. They've published Kook and Geniet, Cook and Enjoy. It's been translated into English. There's even a kids version, and that book has been going on, I don't know for how long. It's been in print forever and ever, and they just reprinted and reprinted. The lady, the original author, died. It was originally self-published, and then the publisher picked it up and published it. But think about the longevity as well of the kind of titles that your competitors publish, as well as the brand of the publishing house itself. Furthermore, if you do your competitor profile, alright, so your readership profile focuses on who is the reader. The competitor profile that you, for example, need to do for your assignment focuses on what are the titles that they are publishing that is in competition, direct competition with yours? Who are the authors that publish these titles? Because your author can be a huge drawing card. Who is the publisher, the date of publication? Because that's also important. It may be that it's a fantastic book that your competitor published, but it may be a little bit outdated. It may be a 2013 version, and your idea may be similar to it, but there hasn't been a new edition yet, so yours would be new in that regard. That's where the edition comes in as well. The format, maybe they do a book on a similar topic as yours, but you are deciding to go for a coffee table or a hardcover, and they did theirs in a soft cover or a paperback. The number of pages, usually it's quite average, for novels, for non-fiction titles. Go and have a look at the page extents as well. You cannot now go to bookstores necessarily, I think, but you can browse online. Usually they have the product details there, and you can see what the page extent is as well. Color hues. Obviously certain genres is only in black and white, but maybe there's spot color, like here and there they use blue. Or is it a full color publication? Pricing, how does your pricing for your book measure up to theirs, or how should it? That is one way of determining your selling price. Now after you've done costing with Alicia's in a week or two's time, you'll see how costing works, but it's good to know what your competitors are asking for the same or similar type of book, so that you don't price yourself out of the market. Remember, there's also a value perception when it comes to pricing. If it's too low, people want to know what's wrong with it. If it's too high, people think you're out of your mind and you're priced out of your own market. It's always good to be kind of like in the middle, not too low, that you discourage people, or you tell them that they think there's no quality, or it's not high quality, whereas not too high where you can't get any buyers. But you will find this out when you do your market research as well. Your competitor profile also relates, as I said before, to theme. Maybe they do publish a lot on state capture, politics, political administration, and journalism, whereas they don't necessarily cover the backstory or the humanitarian kind of vibe, or something different. Special features, especially with children's books. I always think about children's books when I think about special features. These novelty books that has sound buttons, and these little fluff and materials and things that you can pull out and pop up, etc., etc. Is it something like that, or is it a unicorn book and there are glitter, cookies at the back, and they can create their own little pop-up unicorn made out of paper? I don't know. Or does it have a special feature if you think about adult books, that you can download the app or get a 20% discount if it's, say, for example, a book about birds, and then, at the end of the book, you get a code, and you can actually go and download the first part of an app that has bird sounds. I'm just trying to think of ideas here, but those kinds of things can be special features. Special features can be puzzles, it can be online quizzes, it can be, be your own detective, find an alternate, detective, I don't know. But you get what I'm trying to say with special features. Or it can even be a product, this is a cookbook and you get an apron free, or you get a signed copy of this famous person whose biography it is. And then obviously the longevity and the seasonality. All right. So your author profile. So we've done the readership profile, we've done the competitor profile. Now getting to the author profile. This is J.K. Rowling. We all know Harry Potter. Right. So with your author profile, what is important about that is it can be a selling point. It can be a drawing card, as I said, either being an existing author, because then we know you're familiar with the publishing process, you know how it works, you know how to keep to deadlines, you are okay to go and speak at public gatherings and book signings and be part of a marketing or promotional campaign. You also have an established fan base, so it's easier to work with you if we have that. Sometimes there's less marketing involved because you've already created your own brand loyalty. People already know you as an author and they already like your books. There can also be an advantage if you're a debut author. Yes, there will be a lot more investment in terms of marketing, but sometimes it's nice to have a fresh new perspective or a new look, or a new girl on, Jenny from the block, a new girl in the neighborhood who is now writing on something that hasn't been done before. So I think with authors, it's important to know, do they also publish with your competitors? That's also an important thing to know, because there may be contractual obligations that they cannot necessarily publish with you because they are tied to a specific contract. Okay, so to recap. First of all, you need to know, what are my research objectives? Meaning, what is it that I want to find out? Research objectives is just a fancy schmancy way of saying, what is it that I'm trying to find out? Then you're going to move on to, and we're going to get to that now, is now that I know what I want to find out, I need to know what kind of categories of information do I need. Right, is that going to be facts? Is it going to be feelings, opinions, behaviors? I'm going to talk about that now. Then as long as I know what is it that I want to find out, what kind of information do I need to know how am I going to do that, and that is your research techniques. Am I going to ask people questions, and am I going to just see what's available online and do desk research? You'll find out. And then you need to know, all right, so I know what I'm going to do, but where do I find it? Where do I find a report on consumer behavior and see what the buying patterns are of young business professionals, women? Where do I find a chat group about bullying in schools and mom being worried because, I want to get to those moms and see whether they will buy a book on how to handle bullying at school, right, to give you an example.